All right, all right. Well, hello and welcome everybody to Meet the Boss, STEM Opportunities in San Diego. I hope you guys are all doing really well tonight. And on behalf of the UC San Diego Student Alumni Associates, we'd like to thank you for coming. So first, I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists, and they'll move into their own introductions right after that. And then we'll get into scripted questions for the alumni, and lastly, take questions from the audience using the Q&A feature. If you'd like to direct your question at a specific panelist, please indicate that in your question. And if you want to be unmuted to ask the question yourself, just message Kayla. She's the one with the UC San Diego background. Okay, so first, we'll start off with Dr. Wojtek. Dr. Wojtek is an associate professor in many programs at UC San Diego, including the Halasioglu Data Institute and the Department of Cognitive Science. Dr. Wojtek, could you please give just a quick introduction of who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. So like you said, I'm a professor here at UC San Diego in Cog Sci and data science. I actually helped set up the undergrad data science major and the Huijiolu Data Science Institute. And prior to starting here, I was a data scientist. I was the first data scientist at Uber back when it was an 8-person startup. So I helped Uber sort of design and develop their data strategy. Don't hold it against me, I quit. And now currently I am also involved with the San Diego Data Science Alliance, which is a nonprofit specifically dedicated to raising the profile of San Diego's nonprofit, for-profit, government, military, ethical data science. And so we're focused on bringing data science more to San Diego and then leveraging the power ethically for all aspects of life.
Incredible. Next, we'll move on to Grant Vausten-Dishington. He's a research software engineer at the Anti-Defamation League. And Grant, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew, and thank you everybody else for having me tonight. I'm Grant. I'm a research software engineer at the ADL, one of the nation's oldest sort of civil rights nonprofits. A lot of my job involves both software engineering, research, and sort of data science in various capacities. I was one of the first data scientists, if not the first data scientist in the ADL's 105-year history. So it's a big bill to sort of fit. And I focus a lot of my work on anti-hate, anti-harassment policies as they relate to large tech companies. You probably all know them, so I won't list them off, but that's sort of my day-to-day work. And I was formerly a grad student at UCSD.
Awesome, thank you for that. Next, we have Dai Li. Dai Li is the lead AI product designer at ServiceNow.
Hi, everyone. My name's Dai. I graduated from Six College way back when, and I'm actually kind of surprised that they haven't renamed it. But I currently work in the enterprise AI space, but for the past 5 years, prior to working at ServiceNow, I worked with a company called Brain Corporation, where the focus was on creating autonomous robots that navigated among dynamic environments and could maneuver around obstacles. And where my specialty lies, and I would say even my passion, is really driving the conversations around how autonomy and intelligent products impact humans, and what are the ethics around AI, and what does that evolution of technology look like? So I'm really excited to be here with everybody today. To go from like sitting on the steps of UCSD as a wide-eyed student, excited about technology, to now kind of driving that conversation. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Next, we have Raquel Vega. And Raquel is a scientist in research and development at Thermo Fisher. Oh, Raquel, you're muted.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raquel Vega, and I'm thrilled to be here today to share a little bit of what has been my journey in science. I graduated from UCSD with a Bachelor in Science last century. No kidding, 1994. So I've been in science for more than 25 years, but who's counting, right? I currently hold a position as a scientist in the R&D department at Thermo Fisher. On a daily basis, I perform genetic modifications using CRISPR-Cas9 in multiple cell types. I use really cool equipment such next generation sequencers to detect single base changes in the genome. And then I look for those effects of those mutations in the cell using fancy microscopes, analyze the data. All these can be applied into very specific disease areas, which could be autism, schizophrenia, or any other immunological disease. So it's pretty cool, the effect of these mutations and how we are understanding their impact in the human biology. And we study with the purpose of generating therapies for these diseases or helping our customers to generate those therapies. I attend conferences and present posters with the latest technologies and applications that enable our customers move the research forward. But besides my science work, I also work on grassroots initiatives that promote a better environment in the science field. And I was named, and it is of great pleasure that I share this with you, the lead chapter for the Latin Hispanic Heritage Employee Resource Group for 2021. So for me, the environment, being inclusive, being where everybody feels comfortable coming to work is very important for me, and I want to work on that. So thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have Monal Parmar, and he's the CEO at Educational Visional Technologies.
Hi, my name is Monal Parmar. I'm CEO of Educational Vision Technologies. It's a company I started while I was a student at UC San Diego. I majored in electrical engineering, and the premise for the technology we created was that in class I had a difficult time to take notes and understand the complex equations that are sometimes derived and taught in class. So I created an automated note-taking system, and I expanded to be an automated online course creation system. And as you know, with the shift to online learning, technologies like ours are very vital for rapidly creating equitable and high quality online courses. I finished my undergrad at the end of 2016. I then went into a master's program at UCSD. I'm on a leave of absence right now, just to focus on the company. And I'm happy to chat with you all about how I got to where I'm at and the various opportunities and technology there are in San Diego.
Great, thank you, thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move into some scripted questions, first for the alumni, and then we'll go into a moderated question and answer afterwards. So to start, Dr. Wojtek, we'll start with you. What is one piece of advice you'd give to aspiring students entering your field?
One? Okay.
You gotta choose one.
All right. Are you okay? Well, I'm going to assume you mean data science, since that's kind of the topic we're talking about now. I could also give some advice about neuroscience, but I'll stick with the data science, which is I'm just going to parrot back everything I hear from our industry partners when I work with them, and I actually run brainstorming sessions and say, what is it that you're looking for from people? And everybody assumes that like what they need is like some superior machine learning, AI, deep learning knowledge to get into data science. And in my experience, that is not true. There's a minimum bar of knowledge that you have to have, but then what everybody really seems to want is somebody who understands how to communicate complex results in a way that non-technical stakeholders and decision makers can understand. Because at the end of the day, you have to convince somebody that your results are correct and meaningful. And that's a non-technical problem for many people. So my one piece of advice is practice communicating technical stuff efficiently and clearly in a non-technical way to people who may not have the same educational background as you do.
That's excellent. Kylie, could you go next about advice for aspiring students entering your field?
Yeah, that was brilliantly said. I wish someone gave me that advice very early on to know that I could have broken into the industry way back when. But I think if I could, looking back even on giving myself this advice back then, oftentimes when I meet people that when I'm interviewing people that want to work at the companies I work at or want to break into the industry, the first thing they say is like, I have a deep profound curiosity for AI and ML, and I really want to get into artificial intelligence. Like, how do I break in? And I think the first thing I would say is that, like, just like the mobile space, the automotive space, the healthcare space, there's a wide variety of divergent pathways that you can take. And the same way that I advise companies and people on how to start with their AI is like, start with what you know, start with what data that you have that you can really leverage to benefit a particular space. I think the frequent misconception is that you have to be highly technical, be an awesome Python or C++ coder in order to get into deep learning or the AI space or robotics and so forth. But it really requires a certain level of knowledge to understand the feasibility of technology and what you can do. And a lot of it from there comes from creativity, understanding a space or an industry, and looking at automation opportunities that aren't being leveraged yet. And I think that's the biggest space of where I've seen students at hackathons, people that may not be in the industry, but have like brilliant ideas that can contribute to the automation space, and not just from a innovation perspective, but also in a what's benefiting humanity and what people need space. So that's the first thing I would say. And I think the second thing I would say, which is going to be a little bit hypocritical to the first thing I said, I would suggest, whether you're a designer, a writer, a technical writer, an industrial artist or whatever, understand the technicality a little bit, take a couple coding classes, understand the depths and the technicalities of machine learning, and know some of the foundational rules so you know what you can break and how you can push limits.
That's great advice. Yeah, thank you. Grant, could you go next?
Certainly, yeah. But first and foremost, I want to echo what my fellow panelists have already said, because it's excellent advice and I really think it's important. My suggestion for everybody is going to be more on like how you approach the things that you want to learn or think you should learn. And my advice very simply for that is to like follow the questions and problems that you're most interested in solving and what really grabs sort of your passion. Because when you go out into the world, you're going to have to keep updating your skills no matter what profession you're in. There's always that degree of continuing education to any career path. But you will hear a lot of suggestions from other usually more senior people in the field on like, oh, you need to learn this thing or that thing. When it comes to machine learning and data science, you'll get all sorts of suggestions for technologies that you have to learn. But really, I would focus on what problem it is you want to solve and take a stab at like how you would do it. What do you need? What data do you need? What analyses do you need to answer that question? And then search for that, search for the technology that people use to answer the question you want to answer. And that will lead you not only to a sustainable path because you actually have your own passion behind it, but it will teach you what you actually need, not just what people think you need based on their own experiences, which will be different from yours. So follow your own questions and your own passion problems.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you. And Raquel, could you go next?
Yes. So for students that are trying to get into the science field, could be very overwhelming as well because of the amount of areas that science is being applied to. And even here, let's just take San Diego alone. We have companies that are developing diagnostic, that are developing therapies for oncology, for mental disorders and things like that. So it can be overwhelming. My advice is read the ads posting. You don't need to match 100% all the requirements that are asked. Apply, learn, connect. If you don't get the job, try to get the interview. Learn from that experience. Venture into a little beyond your comfort zone. And that's something that I didn't do. I was very conservative and I was always trying to match 100% the job description. Thermo Fisher, for example, it can be very broad and general, the job descriptions. Go ahead and apply, and you will see how this can take you. You are going to have a learning experience on the interview process. You're going to make connections, perhaps, or what about if you even get the job? So that will be my advice.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And Monal, could you go next? Same question.
So one bit of advice. My background is in tech startups. So the advice I'd give for students who are thinking to possibly create a tech startup would be to just do it. It's worst case, you have awesome project on your resume that employers would love to hear about. The most interesting candidates that we get, and I'm sure it's true for all companies, are from students who have their own personal projects or projects through engineering clubs, research labs. So the side projects are extremely important. So, if you were to go work on a programming or machine learning project on your own, worst case, you have something that's really you can showcase to a company, and best case, it could actually lead to a career. So yeah, I think the advice I'd give is just go build something, and try to try to build a business if that's what you want to do, and of course leverage all the resources there are at UCSD. I've leveraged pretty much every single program there is that supports starting companies.
May I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Just to share like a short anecdote, especially in the startup world, a lot of times we have startup ideas and we want to create something big for it. And the end goal is either to be acquired or hopefully, generate enough revenues or have daily active users. Last Christmas, I dissolved a company I co-founded, and it was probably one of the hardest and most disheartening things I've ever had to do. And it felt like a failure, to be honest. But like now in hindsight, almost a year later, and starting a different company, it's not, and it becomes something that really changes you, that you take forever onto the lessons of your next venture and your next effort in all of your applications. So failures aren't always just failures. As cliche as that sounds, apologies everyone.
I actually have at the end of my CV section of failures. It just lists every grant that I've applied for that I haven't gotten, every grad school that I applied to didn't get into, every job I applied for didn't get, just because I think people don't see that, right? Like they see people successful and they don't realize that behind any kind of incremental success that you might have, there's just this long line in history of shots that you failed.
Yeah. So much so.
Yeah, absolutely. Failure is usually the best learning experience. Okay, and as one more round of questions from me before we move on to the audience questions, again, we'll start with Dr. Wojtek. How have you had to adapt and pivot during COVID-19? Just a couple of the ways.
Oh, a couple of that.
You could list off a whole list if you want, but the major ones.
There's personal, and then there's professional, right? And the personal side, I've got two young kids. Well, it's hard. The problem is, the pivot is, there is no separation now between the personal and the professional, right? I mean, I'm in my, I've got some weights back here so that when I'm on a call, I can try and do a little bit of exercise when the camera's off, right? I've got my giant teddy bear. This is just kind of the space that I've built for myself over the last 8 months to work. And that's the biggest pivot, is the blending of the personal and the professional. My daughter and son will come in here potentially even during this call. to ask questions. Then it happens all throughout the day when I'm working. They're pretty young; they're 6 and 9, and I don't usually work in the evening, so they're like, "What? Come and do something with us. Let's play Zelda or something, right?" Smash Brothers, honestly, but and so that's the biggest hardest pivot. And the secondary one related to that is being mindful that that is the case for just about everybody that I'm working with, right? I still run a research lab, and everybody's still trying to do research and advance their careers, despite having maybe children at home and having to take care of loved ones and family and things like that. And so being just extra mindful of everybody's hardships that they're facing right now, and trying to give everybody some space. uh, yeah. Anyway, that's I could go on about this forever, but I will get off the soapbox and allow somebody else to take over for a bit.
That blend is tough. Grant, could you explain next? Any pivots or adaptations during COVID-19 in your professional experience, in your career?
Yeah, so I think I had an easier time adjusting than most, fortunately, because my job is remote. I lived in San Diego now for almost kind of a year, so I was already sort of used to working here, and previously I lived up in Silicon Valley. But the biggest adjustments are to the expectations that you have of people, because like Professor Wojtek just mentioned, people have other obligations, personal and professional, that they can't just ignore because they're supposed to be at the same working hours that they were before the pandemic hit. And you have to, be more, I think it's helped, at least in my workplace, make people a little more flexible and understanding that, we have these sort of dedications and parts of our identity that are not tied to our job, which is a whole other topic worth discussing. So the biggest pivot has been in, the flexibility and understanding more. And I think the positive change has been more understanding of my teammates' lives and their understanding mine. And we do our best to sort of help each other. And that's really sort of the qualitative pivot that we made behind the scenes that I think gets underestimated a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Daili, could you go next?
Yeah, I'll be brief, but I'll answer this for 3 parts, like 2 pivots professionally and then 1 personally. The personal part is I never realized how much my discipline and application to everything that I did, whether that's weight training or research or my job, relied on the continuity of going into an office and then separating that elsewhere. So, and I'm still figuring that out, so I'm not going to pretend I have the answer for that, but I think that's a big part personally, is kind of rediscovering discipline in a way of how to split up the hours and prioritize things that matter, including personal health and fitness and so forth. Professionally, 2 interesting portions, because I started a new job this year, the lead a product designer role at ServiceNow, which was purely virtual. I've never met my team in person except for during my interview. So on one hand, it was very difficult because there's existing relationships and data understandings and customer understandings and a lot of legacy knowledge that comes with coming into a technical space that you don't get when you're isolated between 4 walls. But the other piece of that pivot that took place that was very unexpected but cool is it kind of democratizes and flattens any type of hierarchy, and it's acceptable more, not that I wouldn't do it before, but even more so now, to just randomly ping people. And it's surprisingly built bridges globally where I've gotten to work and talk to teams in India, in all over Europe, on the East Coast, in Canada, and that part is incredibly cool. And then the last part is starting a business amidst COVID, right, where it's uncertain. And I think with that, one of the best things I found, and this is even in like judging CES innovation submissions, is that exploration of opportunity in changing circumstances. And this applies a lot to where we're at today, is just like seeing how people have pivoted. And I don't want to say taken advantage of, because that has a negative connotation towards it, but really looking for a need of whether that's like a delivery service. There's a man in my building who started delivering Starbucks drinks to everyone because Postmates was taking too long. So he created a sub business for himself. But yeah, creating a business, just really looking at opportunity and being more conservative in risk, and also being more risky where we can, because we can afford to be. And those are kind of some of the pivots I've made.
Wonderful. Raquel, how have you had to adapt and pivot with COVID?
This is a very interesting question because Thermo Fisher is considered, the employees at Thermo Fisher are considered essential workers because we work with products that support the development of vaccines against COVID-19. So by the state definition, we are essential workers. So I've been working the whole time. However, there are modifications, and these modifications in my laboratory work really added some stress level because we need to maintain distances between colleagues. We have to follow a lot of the check-ins for temperature, and we have to follow an entire set of procedures on top of the procedures that we do to set up experiments. Now, another challenge is we're busier than ever. Why? Because of our customers want their results, their products faster because they're working on this urgent need that is to develop the vaccine against COVID-19. So lots of work, many regulations, stress level high, but we adapt. And that's something that as a team, we work hard to make it amenable and safe and comfortable as much as possible. However, we move everything, all the social events, all the meetings virtual, and we take them from home. Nothing at work. At work, we execute experiments and then we leave. That's it. So that's how we had to adapt.
Great, thank you. And Monal, being a CEO, how has this had to change for you during COVID?
So our company specializes in creating online courses. So we had a surge in demand when shelter at home started. We had to scale sooner than expected. So that in itself produced a substantial increase in workload for the whole team. And so coordinating everyone on team to try to bring on new customers, that definitely was a challenge. Because everything is remote, we decided to expand our product line to create a separate product. So our main product is a device that goes in the classroom, and it uses machine learning to on the video data. So it takes footage of the classroom, takes in audio video feed, processes that data to create assets for an online course, and puts all of the assets online in a shell that's for online learning. And so our main product was tied to a presenter or instructor going to a classroom. So we expanded our product offering to have fully remote capabilities. So essentially you upload your Zoom videos, such as this Zoom recording that's being produced from this call. It will enhance the recording and provide a better learning experience for users. So over this past summer, we've just been working to create this new service. And it's, there's so much uncertainty on our universities and schools going to have in-person classes? Are they going to be remote? Is there going to be a hybrid? And there's so much uncertainty. So for us, we're still having to, as information comes in, use that to make decisions on which products we want to invest more on, which regions we want to focus our marketing efforts on. So it's still a very adaptive situation. But yeah, the main thing was new product to better support fully remote learning, and the challenges of trying to scale a company, scale a team, and have everyone work very effectively together. So that means a lot more processes, a lot more, a lot more, implement more processes, things that, might fly being informal in an office setting, now most definitely need to be turned into a formal process. And so trying to add as much structure as possible to keep everything more organized.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so now we're gonna move into a moderated question and answer. So all the people who are attending, if you have a question, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little button that says Q&A. Please use that to submit your questions, just to make it a little bit easier on our end. And the first question we have is from Rakesh, and this is directed at any panelist. What are some advantages or resources, such as incubators, accelerators, mentorship, etc., that San Diego holds when it comes to starting a company or entrepreneurial pursuit? And if you want me to repeat the question, let me know and I'll do that.
I can speak on this. So there are many resources to start a business in San Diego. It's at UCSD alone, there's at least 6 incubators / accelerator programs. There's the Basement, which is a student accelerator. If you haven't checked it out, definitely recommend it. You get some capital, $1,000 to $2,000 per team. You get access to amazing mentors. You previously got office space. So if if it's safe to go back on campus, that's something you'd get access to. There's a lot of programming, curriculum. There's the Institute for a Global Entrepreneur, another organization on campus which supports students and faculty to start businesses. They have NSF I-Corps program. It's a 3-session program where you meet with, you get assigned mentors, and there's curriculum. They basically give you feedback on your business idea, and at the end of the program, you get $1,000. So it's just 3 sessions, and you get $1,000. So it's most, definitely worthwhile to do if you are even thinking about starting a company. There's at the Rady School of Management, there's a lot of programs through the Start Our incubators, and they have programs for veterans. They have programs for women. They have programs for social impact innovators. So they have a lot of programs that are tailored to various demographics. And so, yeah, at UCSD, it's there's many programs to support you to start a business. There's also at UCSD, there's BioLink or Blue Link, which is a med tech accelerator. There's the Office of Innovation and Commercialization. They have their own curriculum and programs. Outside of UCSD, there's programs for female entrepreneurs. So there's Stella Labs and Ad Astra Ventures. So those are, so Stella Labs is a curriculum, and it's basically an incubator, which helps you to start your business. It's about 12 weeks long or so. It's like 3 months or so. Ad Astra Ventures, it's a VC group that specifically invests in females and minorities. There's Connect, the Connect organization in San Diego. They have a whole bunch of programs, and they have the Connect All, which is for diverse founders. There's San Diego Startup Week. San Diego Startup Week has they have a conference every annual conference plus mentorship program. So it's to kind of branch out to a lot of these other resources. It's probably best to go to UCSD's innovation website. From there, you can see like what are all the resources in San Diego. They have a map of the different accelerators, so you can to get a glimpse of the whole ecosystem. It's best to go to. I'll post it in the chat, but it's best to go to the UC San Diego's innovation website or to San Diego Startup Week's website. They also have a map of the ecosystem.
And before you even get to that, something that I found has been helpful, just even getting into the experience of being able to like pitch a VC or sit in front of investors and talk about your idea. Join a lot of hackathons and pitch competitions. There's a lot of pitch competitions that take place throughout Southern California and in Las Vegas as well too, that you can join that are open to students. A lot of the hackathons, when great ideas come through and you come up with something cool, you'll end up meeting someone that wants to push like that innovation or that idea forward as well too. And another option is some of the development groups, like there's local robotics groups and there's local code meetup groups that will do hackathons together. And someone will eventually know someone that will also get your idea forward too. If you didn't feel comfortable, you know, going through the incubator route first and wanting to get a dry run of your idea.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. This is from Ria, and she's asking, what is the best advice you've ever gotten, and what's the worst advice you've ever gotten? Anybody can start, or if you want to go in the order that we had earlier, Dr. Wojtek to Grant to Daily to Raquel to Monal, we can do that.
Sure. I'm actually going to piggyback one thing really quick. I should mention on that last question, there's also the San Diego Data Science Alliance, which is partly aimed, that's the nonprofit I'm involved in, at trying to connect these groups of people. So I put the website here, and I'll put my email address for the Data Science Alliance also. So if you're looking for connections to local San Diego, specifically data science entrepreneurs, I can help with that. But if it's more broadly just the tech community, then you know there's a lot of overlap between those. In terms of the best advice I ever got, I don't know if it's the best advice I ever got, but a good piece of advice on the professional side that I got, at least for my education during my PhD work, was, well, no, I don't think that's actually very good advice. I'm not going to give that. I don't think that's bad advice or good advice. What I was going to say was my PhD advisor sort of joked with me and said that when I was completing my PhD thesis, that my job should be to shoot for the C+ of PhD theses. So that advice is not the good advice. Don't shoot for the C+. But the good advice that's wrapped up inside of that, if you unpack that a little bit, is don't spend more time on work that doesn't matter. And that's not to say that the PhD doesn't matter, but the PhD thesis itself in the sciences usually is mostly a formality that's a result of the years of research that you've done. And so what matters in the sciences is the research products that you develop. Like, what are the ideas that you've had, and how are you disseminating that to the world? And the PhD thesis is not that. And so you have to do the PhD thesis in order to, like, you know, get the final approval. But you know, the emphasis there is to really focus on the work that matters to you. And you know, I think that by matters to you, I honestly truly mean that in every sense of the word, not just what's engaging and exciting to you, but also like what matches your ethics, what matches your what makes you happy, right? And I guess some of the worst advice I ever got was on the professional side of to distill this one out, chase something that doesn't matter to you, right? Like, oh yeah, you should definitely move there because the job is going to be great. And honestly, I don't want to move. Like, San Diego is an amazing city. I don't want to move, you know, halfway across the world to take a job that is a very, very good job that pays very well, but I know I'm not going to be happy in that city. And so I had a job offer in a part of the world that I didn't love, but the opportunity would have been amazing. And so I turned it down, and that was super hard because essentially I didn't have a job then. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I've spent 20 something years in education, and I have this amazing job that's being handed to me at an incredible research institute, and I don't want to do it. And so I tell people this all the time. For me, like the idea of not living in San Diego and moving somewhere else seems just wild. After being here now for 6 years, I've absolutely fallen in love again with this city. But I know it's not for everybody, right? And so if you're like from New York or Paris or Chicago, where it's like a real city with real buildings everywhere, right? Or if you're from a rural part of the world that you're not used to cities, or you just like seasons and the feeling of the passage of time, you're going to be pretty unhappy here. And I tell people that I'm like, look, if you're going to be thinking about moving here to join my lab or join our program, really think about, are you going to be happy? Because if you're not going to be happy here, your work will suffer. And so to break it out, the best piece of advice I ever got is don't spend time on things that don't matter to you. And the worst piece of advice I got is essentially, chase a job because it pays well or something like that. I don't think those are always good pieces of advice.
Man, that's so. I guess, sorry for interrupting. If anyone else wants to go, you can go, or I can go. I think best advice I ever got, it came out of a really dire situation. Was it like Isaac Newton said his famous statement of, I saw further standing on the shoulders of giants, is just like ask for help. There was this period, I was in one of my final last quarters, and I was working full time and going to UCSD at that same time. And I was in a class, wasn't even paying attention. I was trying to finish some freelance projects, and I remember kind of being on the brink of tears. Class had ended. I was using the school Wi-Fi, and my professor came up to me and he goes, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, "I don't think I can make the end of class project deadline." And I said, "I need to finish this freelance project so that I can get paid, so I can pay for my school tuition. And they've already delayed my school tuition." And I didn't think there was any other option. And he kind of sat down with me and he said, "Have you talked to your teachers about submitting your freelance work as school projects and seeing if those overlap?" And I go, "What? I could do that?" And he said, "Why not?" So that following week, I explained my situation to every professor, and I wish I could thank just one, but there were so many of them. And this has happened throughout my career and everything, but just being able to be vulnerable about your situation and let people know what's going on and let people help you. I think there's a sense of, pride in wanting to take care of yourself and not wanting to bother people. But I think, there's so many people that pave the way for us, and we can pave the way for someone else. Just ask for help and let people help you. That would be the best advice I ever got. I think the worst advice I ever got was very familiar to the last one. I was so excited about, I finally decided I'm going to change my career. I'm going to do the thing I want to do. I want to get into tech, want to do design. And I really love this industry and I want to make a mark in it. And I remember sitting on the phone with a friend and a friend telling me, that the max salary for this position is X, right? That's your ceiling. So it's funny, Jeff Ma said the same thing about Alibaba, where it's friends and family. And I know they have good intentions. People close to you tend to want to be conservative and see you safe. But the worst advice is oftentimes those that impose ceilings on you. And this is not a cliche footprints, follow your dreams type thing, but this is really think about where that advice comes from and these imposed ceilings, and, formulate your own opinion from your own research and talk to people. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Grant, Raquel, or Monal, do you guys have any advice or bad advice you'd like to share, or else we can move on to another question?
I would like to add that for these careers that are so technical, being able to communicate with different people of different backgrounds is very important. I think that was part of what was mentioned before, that you need to sell your idea to somebody else that doesn't have the same background as you do, but they are the ones that are going to take the decision if your project moves or not. So I think communicating skills and listening to what people have to say as well. So those will be my advice. Bad advice that I got. Oh man, I can. It's a long list, and somehow I had to develop a feeling to reject those that didn't make much sense. But something that comes to my head is one of my bosses asked me to work with these difficult coworkers, and as if that was my responsibility to help him fix that type of negative attitude of these employees. You know, rather than that advice, I would have liked that he had told me, why don't you do your best as showing the example on how to promote a positive environment rather than trying to make it sort of my responsibility. So that I thought that was not a good advice, but that's my feedback.
Thank you. Grant or Manal, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on bad advice. So it's, when you are starting a company and running a company, you have really the full picture of everything. You're aware of where you are at when it comes to legal work. You're aware where things are at in regards to product, engineering, sales, finance, marketing, team. You have a 360 view of things. And so you get, you have a lot of criticism on, there's salespeople who say, oh, you're not, or there's salespeople who say, oh, you focus too much on engineering. There's engineering people who say you focus too much on sales. You should focus more on engineering. So it's you have, because it's so many variables that you're factoring in, it's your path forward is not necessarily obvious to everyone who only is trying to create a path forward with a limited subset of variables. So it's you get a, there's going to be at least for me, there's a lot of people who over time have given me advice, which if you did look at the full picture, didn't make sense, but through that narrow lens of marketing or sales or legal, it makes sense. So I actually have kind of come up with a filter for bad advice and criticism. It's because you could have someone who's extremely respected, smartest person in the world when it comes to marketing, but if they're giving you advice related to an engineering problem, they're out of their scope of expertise, and it's you kind of filter that out to see, okay, the advice I'm getting, are they a domain expertise? Are they a domain expert? If not, then dilute that. You should probably dilute their not in every scenario, but it's that could be justification to dilute their advice or criticism down. And so that's something that I have developed, especially this year, is you have, because I constantly get advice and feedback from a lot of people, and I need to know of like, is this fair? Is this reasonable? Does this make sense? And you could have the smartest people in the world who are giving you really bad advice, and it's and you could feel bad because it's like, wow, this person is extremely successful, extremely smart, and and it's for not taking their advice, it could feel bad. But yeah, just having those filters, knowing like, Are they a domain expert? Have like, what is their motivation behind giving that advice? Is there, do they, like, if you follow their advice, is there anything that they have to gain? There's, yeah, just adding a whole bunch of filters before I, decide to take someone's advice. That's one thing that I've started to do.
Yeah, that's very smart. And Grant, I'd love to hear some advice that you've gotten and some also bad advice that you've gotten.
Yeah, my fellow panelists have all given very good filters and criteria for how to get bad advice, so I won't add to the worst advice part of it. I'll just remind people that not all advice is distilled wisdom. It comes from biased sources, and you want to consider whether advice really applies to you. The best advice I'll give is a very practical one. It came from an engineer who's worked in the field of software engineering longer than I've been alive, and he started his first company at 19 or whatever. His advice to me, which I'll pass on to all of you, is that, try to only work for the hours that you're paid. And it sounds kind of simple and blasé, but when you think about it, if you're paid for 35 hours or 40 hours to work a week, that's the amount of time you should put in. Because if you're working, say you have a 40-hour-a-week job and you're working 50 or more, essentially every fifth week that you're on work, your employer gets for free. You're literally donating your paycheck back to the people who employ you. And if that concept doesn't make sense to you, then why would you give more time than you're actually paid for? So my reminder to people is just you are worth what you're paid for. You are worth what you're paid on the job and your salary, and you shouldn't need to feel like you have to go above and beyond in terms of time unless you yourself want to for that mission. If you want to go above and beyond, do it for your sake, not to give your employer free money.
Brilliant, thank you. This is from Rakesh, and he's asking, with San Diego growing as an important city in regards to STEM, what specific industries that utilize STEM fields do you believe are going to show the largest amount of growth in San Diego? More succinctly, what are the areas of STEM in the STEM industry in San Diego that's going to grow the most over the coming years?
I think in terms of technology, enterprise automation and automation as like a service for both small businesses and large scale companies, there's a lot of opportunity to remove redundancy in a lot of processes that companies go through, whether that's supply chain management or manufacturing to providing customer service for other businesses and like end consumers to even retail. So I think that's an area that's about to boom, is kind of AI in this space of just helping businesses with their processes and workflows. And I'm not just saying that because I work at ServiceNow.
Grant, what did you have to add to this?
Yeah, I don't have terribly much experience with San Diego's ecosystem specifically, but I remember from my grad student days, just never underestimate San Diego's sort of biotech industry and biosciences. I expect there'll be a lot of innovations now that, I don't know if anybody's heard the news of like DeepMind's AlphaFold AI has solved a major grand challenge in biology. So I'm sure there are many challenges like that remaining, and that's going to have an effect on the field. There was also another question related to chemical engineering in the chat. So my general advice would just be to not underestimate the applicability of programming or data science or data related skills to any other field. It's really sort of a versatile set. So any industry could really take a foothold regardless of what San Diego's strengths are now.
Yeah.
And not to mention like the diverse industries in San Diego too. I got my start in gaming in San Diego for automotive. Carlsbad like has Mercedes-Benz R&D up there. There's like so many cool tech companies in San Diego, and there's like startups popping up every day of just people doing cool stuff.
San Diego is huge, and it's the exposure I've had is mainly in just the startups in San Diego, tech startups. And they're diverse. It's all across the board. There's typically the types of companies, the the companies in the area and the academic focus of the universities are usually in sync. So if you have a lot of semiconductor companies, then typically that university will have really strong semiconductor programs, and vice versa. So in San Diego, at UC San Diego, the AI programs are expanding really rapidly. So I think that, that's definitely drawing companies to open up campuses in San Diego to have, office. Well, I guess now since everything's remote, that trend of moving to creating, having offices in cities where the talent matches what you need, it might have some changes to it, but I most definitely think there's going to be, because of how strong UC San Diego's AI programs are and data science programs, it's most definitely there's going to be a lot more or a growth in machine learning data science companies in San Diego.
Great. And I have just one last question for me that I'm personally asking. So I'm an international business major. I'm not even STEM, but my goal in the future is to manage and lead a technical team. And so what do you think is the most important coding language for me to learn if I want to A, lead a technical team, and B, be able to communicate effectively with them? And it's kind of broad, I know, but
I think one, I'm not entirely convinced that you need to learn a technical language in its full complexity, but I do believe you should know some and be able to communicate in that language, especially among technical teams. Like I've found some companies, when they use machine learning, it's dedicated like C++. Others are doing it with like JavaScript using TensorFlows like libraries because what they're trying to do is very minimal. I think it depends on whether you're working on hardware, whether you're working on software. I think the best advice I can give you is keep yourself malleable, depending on what context and where you're applying to and what team you're leading. But especially in whether I've worked in both Japan and in China, and now I'm working with different teams everywhere, it's varying and it's really different depending on that technical application. So I guess don't be married to one is what I'm saying. Especially if you're not diving into the pure technical execution field, but more so from potentially guiding consumption and creation and kind of being a technical diplomat.
Right. Yeah, well said. Thank you. Grant or Monal, if you have something to add, that'd be fantastic. If not,
I guess this is a question I can answer a little bit, because I report to a senior product manager who is not herself a technical person, who is not like a coder or developer. She came from her background is actually in dance and a lot of other things. So it's really interesting. In case you thought having an art major meant you couldn't do technical work, but I would say to the question what technical language you should learn. I don't know if you're speaking to a communication language or a programming language especially, but I would say that out of whatever choices you have, just commit to learning whichever one seems the most interesting to you, because in my experience, mastering and learning one doesn't come as an opportunity cost or a sunk cost to learning the others, because once you learn one, it's much easier to learn the others and to adapt to the others in whatever context. So my better advice is, rather than focusing on which language should I learn, focus more on which language has the community I'm most interested in. So look at how that community treats newbies and rookies and newcomers to that language. Ask yourself if you like the tone with which they answer questions, if you can, especially if you can find questions from other amateurs or other newcomers to the field, to that language, and go with the community that you feel like you would be most included in, because that's the one that you're going to master the best. And then when you have one, like I said, you have roads to all the others.
Grant, you
Yeah.
are the best. That is like
Yeah, it's
the
incredible.
most awesome advice. Like coming from a noob who's like terrible at programming but understands the gist of it. Like that's so huge. Like how people, yeah, find your tribe.
People are much better. There's no type of person that is a programmer or data scientist.
Yeah.
Anybody can become one. It's just, a matter of one. And I find that if people fail or they falter or they stumble on the path, it has a lot more to do with the community that they came in with, usually because they didn't know the other options, or they thought that the community they already had connections to was the only option for them. So that's just, something I always keep in the back of my mind. I hope the audience will find that advice as helpful as you do, but thank you for the kind words.
Thank you. Wow. Awesome. Well then, that is it. This closes our event for tonight. Again, thank you to everybody who's still here. I hope you guys have a fantastic week and a wonderful holiday season, even though it's going to be a little bit strange this year. And I cannot wait to see you at the next SAA event.
Yeah. High five, everyone. It was nice to meet all of you.